All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Cast Iron Conversations. I wanted to take some time to introduce you all to my first guest, the very first guest of Cast Iron Conversations podcast. He's a former restaurateur, a beloved chef in the great state of Florida. He's a father, a funny man, a man who gives great food for thought, and more importantly, someone I consider a real good friend. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Chef Dave Palmer. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Pat. Man, it's great to be here.
How you been, man? I feel like it's been a while since we chatted.
It kind of has. We've both been really kind of busy. You've got all kinds of stuff going on, and so do I. I've been traveling around a lot lately, so I'm not at home all the time. But you know, I'm home most of the time, really.
Yeah.
But it's like plans. You run around. I'm doing a renovation. The renovation is a studio kitchen, and so I'm trying to gear up everything.
So just to give everybody a little bit of background, Dave and I actually met through Organic Valley. We're both ambassadors for Organic Valley's program. As you can see with the cup here, we were actually invited to Wisconsin to go on an Organic Valley meet where we got to meet other ambassadors. We got to learn about the organic farming lifestyle. And we've really built a connection ever since then. And one of the things that he mentioned to me while we were talking was that before he turned 50, he wanted to travel all across the country to all 50 states to kind of get a feel of the different types of food people eat there, just understanding the restaurant culture and just kind of exploring the 50 states in America with a focus and emphasis on food. I will definitely talk a little bit more about that later on. Because personally, as someone who grew up loving and watching Anthony Bourdain, and we've talked about this before, Dave, that's something that
Yeah.
I feel is missing in today's culinary space. I feel like the food industry has geared a lot towards more of the dramatic side, the reality TV
Yeah.
side of food, but Anthony gave uh, Anthony gave us a certain passion and a certain love of food that no one else has. And I truly believe that you can kind of bring that back. But again, we'll definitely talk about that as we get a little bit more into this interview. Right now, I just want to know and share with my supporters a little bit more about you. So, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you got into the food industry, and just some things that inspired you to want to become a chef and a restaurateur.
Well, I was born in Alabama, and I moved when I was a kid. 11 years old. Moved to the Atlanta area. Then I went to school, went to college. Just went for business, and turned turned out that when I moved away to college, I was eating better than my friends because I decided that I was going to cook instead of eat out all the time.
Hmm.
Um, man, my friends were just blowing through their money, and I was eating well. Uh, I I come from a family of five, so we had a lot of home cooked meals growing up. My mom always cooked dinner. My dad is a terrible cook, but but he's actually okay on the grill. He learned
Thank you.
later that
Hmm.
the grill was his space. Um, but put him in the kitchen and it's not so good. But we have a lot of funny stories about that as well. Anyway, so I moved away from home and went off to college. I went to Kennesaw State University, and that's in Georgia, um, opposite side of the state from where my parents live. So I wasn't at home all the time. I was on my own. So I bought a cookbook, and then I bought some more cookbooks, and it's weird. You can learn just trying things out, and I learned what I was good at, what I wasn't good at. One of those things is pizza, and I was making homemade pizza back. Oh gosh, I've been making pizza for more than 20 years,
Hmm.
and I got my recipe, my very first pizza dough recipe, out of a 99-cent cookbook, paperback cookbook that I bought at the drugstore. And I don't even think I paid full price for it. I think it was on clearance. And so I've been developing a recipe ever since, and it's
Yeah,
you just get better and better when you keep practicing.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
I practiced on my college friends. They called me Chef Boyardee Dave, and they confessed that I cooked better than their moms,
Yeah,
and so they would come over to my apartment, and I would test out my recipes on them. They were happy to oblige. Um, one funny thing that sort of became a tradition was they would call and they'd say, "Hey, Dave, we want whatever it was, even if it was like hot dogs." They'd say, "What do you need?" And they would literally go to the grocery store and pick up anything that I was missing, plus some beer, and then they'd bring it to my apartment. I would start cooking. We'd open the beers, we'd play video games, and just we developed a community really, where we eat together, and that's part of what inspired me to open a restaurant. uh, 12 years later, but my wife and we got married, and I moved to Florida. So there's not much in my town, and I got the idea of opening a coffee shop. Well, coffee shop turned into sandwich shop, and then sandwiches we started adding things to the menu, and the menu got bigger and bigger, a little fancier. Um, and we went from basics, kind of a grilled sandwich, to having things like pizza with sun-dried tomatoes and goat cheese, and huge salads with fresh greens, and just unique flavor combinations. And I live out in the country,
absolutely.
so my food was different, and so it worked really well, and my restaurant was really, really loved. I was open for 7 years. I was successful at it, and then we had a landlord issue, and that changed everything. So that they decided not to renew our lease, and there aren't many places to go in my town of 500 people.
Yeah,
So real estate's kind of small. Um, so we moved all of the retail stuff that was part of the business into another business, and set up a booth basically at a vendor mall, and we saw all that stuff there. And then I came home and I was like, I still love this. I still like sharing my food with the world. So um, I started posting things on the internet. My following from the restaurant on social media was, behind me. They all jumped on and followed me as an individual, and just started sharing, and the sponsors started coming out and noticing me and seeing what I was doing, and one man production team. So it just all fell into place, and then the pandemic hit. So I was at home. I was with my kids. I had to start homeschooling them, and I turned it into a business.
wow, that's an incredibly amazing and inspiring story, and I have so many takeaways from just everything that you said. So let's just dive in. One of the first things that caught my attention about your story was how when you went to college, your immediate mindset was to cook. I have a 17-year-old who's actually about to go to NYU in a few months, and one of the things that I've been instilling in him is that college is expensive, especially since he'll be going to New York. What he expects to pay here for food, you'll probably get a bag of chips out there in New York. So I teach
Mhm.
him, it's while it is nice, once in a while to order out, there's nothing like a good home cooked meal. And when you can take simple everyday ingredients and make magic out of it, it's more rewarding. Just like you said, not everything has to be what you're used to when it comes to food. Like just for example, when you naming the toppings that you put on the pizza, and that's one of the things that had us connect. We met in Wisconsin. You don't necessarily have to go the traditional route when it comes to food. You have to try different things. You have to be willing to be adventurous because one, you'll never know what you like, and two, you may come up with the creation that no one else would have thought of. Like, who would have thought when we were growing up that people would like, goat cheese or arugula or balsamic on a pizza. But when you think of those
Oh yeah.
combinations, it just goes so well together. Even when we were in Wisconsin, we I trying to remember the exact dish that we made, but it had like Ritz crackers and cheese and fruit and just those combinations. While some people may think I would have never thought of that, when you actually taste it, your senses get invigorated. You get to taste the sweetness, you get to taste the salty. Like these are things that we as chefs think about because we want you to have a unique flavor experience that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, and where I start with a recipe is usually what elements of the flavors are in, yeah, are in the ingredients that I have on hand. In Wisconsin, we didn't have much of a choice. We had what was there in the fridge, so we had to come up
Right.
with something. So I have found that most people enjoy dishes that have salty, sweet, sour, and bitter all in that dish. If you can get all four of those flavors together into one dish, you probably have a hit. Think about a Reuben sandwich. It's got
Hmm.
everything. You got
Yep.
the salty of the corned beef, you got the sour from the sauerkraut, you got the sweet from the dressing, and then the bitter. When you think bitter, it's not necessarily bitter, bitter, but bitter like grains have some bitterness to them. So the rye has a little bit of bitterness to it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I feel like, as you said, like some of the best recipes include all those elements, and you kind of want them to hit at certain points. Like for me personally, I love to taste a dish that, let's say, for example, it hits your tongue with a little bit of saltiness. And then on the back end, you get some of that sweetness and maybe a touch of the sourness. And then afterwards, when you're finished, it's like, hmm, do I taste a little umami in that? And
Yeah,
it's interesting because like these are things that you don't necessarily know or have as a chef immediately. These are things that of course over time you kind of train your palate to do with trying different recipes and tasting different foods. But
yeah,
people think, and this is going to kind of segue into my next question. People kind of see what's out there on social media, and when we come up with these unique creations, it may not gravitate to people at first, but over time it does because we do kind of showcase the importance of why these dishes go together. So kind of segueing into my next question, when you, because I know we both kind of see what goes on with the food scene and social media. um, how do you feel about, and I hate to use this term because I don't want to call it that, but it is what it is. How do you feel about stunt food? And by stunt food, I mean the recipes that you kind of see people do strictly just for the views, like just throwing a random thing
yeah,
out there, a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich on a cookie. Now, me personally, I feel like there are certain types of stunt food that you can get away with because it does kind of make sense when you kind of think about the layering and think about the flavor. But then there are some things, like I just mentioned with the bacon, egg, and cheese cookie, that I feel people just do strictly for the content aspect of it, not necessarily the culinary aspect. So I just kind of wanted to gather your thoughts on that.
I'm not a fan. Um, I feel like, well, one, it's a stretch, right? So if you're gonna make something, make sure that it tastes good. Don't do it for stunt value because to me that's wasteful if nothing else. And then I feel like we have a bit of a responsibility as influencers to not guide people the wrong way. Don't teach people something just for stunt value, just you know to get views, and then then waste their time and waste ingredients, waste their money. Um, I'm big about not having food waste. Um, in my restaurant, I was like really careful about not wasting food. We slice tomatoes for sandwiches, and then we dice the tops of the tomatoes for salads. Just to give you an example. So
Mhm.
stunt food, I'm not a fan.
I don't blame you. I, like I said, I feel like there are certain recipes that you can kind of get away with as long as it, tastes good and is aesthetically pleasing and it makes sense. But I can kind of see why a lot of professional chefs kind of look at social media cooks in a certain light. And it's not to knock anybody who does cooking on social media, because I feel like as
Right.
long as you have that passion and have that respect for the business, you know, it's all for it. But then you have people who create these creations, and it kind of takes away from people who are actually trying to educate and cook actual recipes, because people think that, oh, well, this is the technique that you're supposed to do when you make this recipe. Or let's say, for example, as you said, we come from, well, you come from a restaurant background. While I don't come from a restaurant background, I do mentor and shadow other professional chefs in kitchens, and I'm, all about learning and growing in that sense. But one thing that I have been always taught is food waste is a big no-no. Um, just like you said, you have the tomatoes and you're slicing for sandwiches, and you can use the tops for dice. Whereas, I was always taught, let's say, for example, you're making lobster tails. Don't throw away the shells. Use that for a really good stock. Or, like
Oh
most
yeah.
people know, when cut up a whole chicken, you can use the backbone for stock. But, different things like that, I feel like we have a responsibility to kind of share on social media and with the world, what to do about proper food waste. But I feel like that message can't get across as much if the focus on, these platforms is the stunt aspect of the food and not the educational piece. I do feel like, thankfully, because I've been monitoring social media for the past few years, that more recently people are kind of gearing away towards the stunt aspect of food, and they're actually pushing out more educational content and pushing out, food content that's of value. And that leads me to my next question, which is something that I definitely want to talk about. Speaking of value, 50 by 50. Now, I know when you first told me about this concept, I was instantly excited. We both are fans of Anthony Bourdain. I loved watching him go to different countries, different states to just talk about food. And he did it in a way where it wasn't pretentious. It wasn't like he did it to, get shock value on TV. He just seemed like a genuine soul having a conversation with people about food, which kind of inspired both our platforms, both with the podcast and your YouTube channel, respectively. Um, just curious about a couple of things. One, what would you say inspired you to do this series? And two, where do you see it going?
Well, my wife actually suggested that I finish off going to all 50 states, and I said to her, well, what if I go to all those 50 states and just start over, and then cook in each one? I've got a web series. And she's like, oh, you should do that. So I got her full support, which is amazing. I have 4 kids, so I'm the primary caretaker at home, but she's kind of making it work in her schedule so that I can go and do this. My mother-in-law helps out a lot too. She lives pretty close by, so you know I always loved Anthony Bourdain, and the shows that he was on. I feel the same way you do. I feel like he was very genuine. I mean, we can address the fact that he was a very troubled person. He
Yeah.
had some serious problems, and that part of it was very sad. And that, but that didn't come through necessarily on screen. And I feel like we watched him genuinely interact with people and teach about foods that you may never try in your life unless you know about them. And so, that's one of the reasons why traveling to the 50 states, one, it's attainable, but also there's a whole country out there full of all kinds of things that you don't know about, because they're not part of your neck of the woods. So the idea behind 50 by 50 is, one, I want to travel and enjoy the 50 states, but I'm taking everybody along with me so that, you're in Delaware, you can see something in Arizona or Wisconsin. And you were there in Wisconsin. with me. And I mean, I'll turn the tables on you. What was it like to you to experience Wisconsin, and how different it might be from where you live? It's definitely different from where I live in Florida.
Yeah.
What was your experience with that?
So honestly, it was a complete culture shock. Like everybody knows I come from New York City and I'm used to loudness, rudeness. I'm used to pollution, large buildings, nonstop traffic, and just busy, busy, busy as my life is now. So when I first came to Wisconsin, immediately smallest airport I've ever been to in my life, which probably is an understatement, but definitely it was. But
You should come to my airport. It's even smaller.
I believe you on that one. But yeah, like when I first came to Wisconsin, immediately everybody is friendly. Like you feel welcome from the moment you step into the state. I felt like I was treated like family. Everybody is so kind. It's all about, good old fashioned values. People there, just to work and, take care of their families. But when I got to the farm and I got to see Organic Valley and just, check out some of the restaurants, people actually care about what they put into their bodies. It's not just, oh, let's go put that. Just kind of want to touch a little bit off topic here first. When I first got to the hotel that we stayed at, one of the things that I definitely did notice that I appreciate is that there weren't any bottles of Pepsi, there weren't any chips or any type of
Mhm.
like, harmful snacks. Everything was organic, no pun intended. They had fresh fruit, fresh cheese. Everything was made with fresh ingredients. And it just shows that people genuinely care about what they put into their bodies and what they're eating. And so when I first got to Wisconsin, my immediate thought was, people are actually creating these recipes and giving us food that is actually good for you. And,
Mhm.
you know, I admit, not everything I make is, 100% healthy. What you see on social media is what I
Yeah.
usually make maybe like once a week or once in a blue moon. Even though I do have a lot of content, it's all batch recorded. But on a normal day, I'm eating salad. I'm, having protein shakes. I'm eating fruit because, I'm getting older and I want to make sure that I am living a healthier lifestyle. But just to kind of see that everybody in the state, shares that same type of mentality was really eye opening for me. And when I came back home, instantly I was inspired because I did have a sense on, organic cooking and, sustainability, but to just see that it was put into practice, so efficiently just kind of made me feel like, this is something that we as, influencers and chefs should be pushing out to our audiences and to the world in general. And that's one of the reasons why I commend 50 by 50, because a lot of, like I said before, like a lot of shows now when it comes to cooking, I don't want to name any specific TV shows or anything, but I feel like they're drawing too much towards the dramatic aspect of television. It's no longer how it was with Anthony Bourdain, where it's like, okay, I'm taking you to this state or this country that's going to teach you about this particular recipe or this particular ingredient and give an educational background on why that's important. It's about nowadays, it's about, the characters on the shows and their, bitterness, their rivalry, their back and forth fighting, but it's never about, the recipes. And that's one of the reasons why I got into cooking on social media, because I wanted to educate people. Like I feel like I have a very extroverted and fun personality, but I'm all about the food at the end of the day. I don't care about the nonsense.
Yeah, me either. And that's also a reason why I ended up online, and you know, never went back to the restaurant business. Because I found that I can accomplish sort of the same thing.
Mhm.
Get it out there, have people eat healthier. My restaurant people were eating healthier as a result of my recipes. I tried to incorporate fresh ingredients and higher quality foods. And so, you know, I'm doing the same thing now, but I get to eat the food, which is, great. And and the other thing is, you have a family like I do, and what we put in their bodies is important. And I've found that my kids were eating poorly because they were eating at school. and no diss on school lunches, they do what they have to do. Um, but I started packing their lunch because I didn't want them eating that kind of food every day. And a lot of kids are eating that food every day, and some of them, it's the only meal they really get. Sadly, we have a lot of free and reduced lunch um, in our area because we're rural, and so people just don't have a lot of money. And not that I have a lot of money, but um, I put my money into higher quality um, food for my family because it's really your foundation. That's they're growing up, and so I want their bodies to be strong, and of course I'm getting older, so I want my body to be strong as well. Um, that You kind of hit the head on the nail on the head when you were talking about the culture in Wisconsin is quite different to a city type lifestyle. And I think our visit there changed a lot of the people that were visiting there with us, changed a lot of minds as to what we're putting into our body matters and it's important. And, you know, you've got to you've got to start at the base, which is the food that you eat every day. And then culture surrounds food. Cultures are based on, or food is based on culture, I guess I should say. Um, so you have to sort of create your own culture if you want to go against the norm, and people doing like the stunt food, you know. Remember there was a while where everybody was putting Doritos on everything,
Oh yeah.
or I mean, why? But I'm sure that the company that makes Doritos was quite excited about that trend, and
Yeah.
and he saw Oreos on everything. I try to stay away from that kind of stuff. Not no diss on having that every once in a while, but being healthy and making good choices for me is important for my family, and I want my influence to reach out and maybe influence people to do the same thing with their families.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And, just touching up briefly on the family aspect of it, just for context for those people who don't know, I have two boys. My youngest is autistic, so his eating habits are kind of limited. When, we were trying to, see what he actually enjoyed to eat, we noticed that a lot of the foods he ate were kind of processed. So he would eat, initially, processed chicken nuggets, or he would eat, breads and waffles. And, unfortunately, because he has picky eating habits because of the spectrum, it does make it a bit of a challenge to get him to eat a lot more, compared to other kids. But that's also one of the things that inspired me in my cooking journey, was trying to find ways to get him to either try different things, or even if he doesn't try different things, what he currently eats, try to make a healthier alternative to it. So I make his chicken nuggets for him. I do let him eat bread, but it's, certain types of bread. He, drinks a lot of sugar-free juices, and, it just goes back to what you were saying before about, when we were growing up. Well, I can speak for myself. I don't, wouldn't want to speak for you, but when I was growing up, I was introduced to, the McDonald's generation. So, we had fast food,
Oh
and we
yeah.
had a lot of processed food, and a lot of foods that people find nostalgic from like the 90s and so on. Everything was like heavily processed. Everything was about, colors and chemicals. And just like any generation prior, we always try to make sure that the next generation, makes better choices and makes better decisions. And I know you said that you have kids who, from an early age, you've instilled that, they eat healthy, they make good choices. And I do see it on your social media pages when, we see your daughters making pizzas, or, they're eating vegetables. And that's not something that a lot of kids tend to stick to, because, while we do our best to make sure our kids, make good decisions, there are other outside influences who may say, hey, you want to try these Doritos. And like you said, it's fine to have it in moderation, but every single day, that's when it becomes an issue. So my next question would be to you, as much as you possibly can control, how do you get your kids to, kind of sustain the same lifestyle that you do without, swaying too much away from what they're normally expected to eat or used to?
Surprisingly, it's not as hard as you might think.
Mm.
Um, a lot of it is just not having the junk in the house.
Yeah.
Um, we got rid of so many junk food items when I first started, thinking, thinking critically about what are we eating here? What am I feeding my family?
Yeah.
Um, is it out of convenience? The answer is yes. Um, but then the more I started thinking about it, it's like, hey, listen, I can make this. Um, and I can make it in like 30 minutes or 45 minutes. It's not that much more effort to put in just to make food that tastes good. I'll also say this: cheese is the key to success with kids. If
I
you can
agree.
put cheese on it, they'll probably eat it.
Hmm. I agree.
And so I'm giving them organic valley cheese. It's a pretty simple trade off, but it works.
Yeah.
Um, as far as like eating junk, we do eat like fast food periodically. Um, we go to scouts and we drive about 30 minutes away to do scouts, and so usually by the time we get done with scouts it's time to hit the drive through, so we go to Wendy's. It's not great for you, but it's not the worst.
Hmm.
And we'll pull into the drive through, we'll get our $5 biggie bag, and everybody's happy and fed. But it's not something that we do all the time. It's more of a occasional thing. Most nights of the week, I'm cooking, and it is worth it's worth the effort. It's definitely worth the effort. And my kids, as a result, have become interested in cooking. So you were talking about your son. Um, it starts young. You got to teach them young that they can do it. That's a big part of it. I think that they just need to feel comfortable that they can do it. So my kids make breakfast typically every day.
Hmm.
I've got a griddle, and they like to cook eggs and toast up a bagel, or um, I usually make the oatmeal if we make oatmeal. But they're learning that they can do it themselves, and that just being interested in that makes a difference in their uh, how they feel about food. And they don't feel like it's a chore because it's normal to them. um, I think a lot of people feel like cooking is a chore, and it's not. It can be a joy, and that's part of the 50 by 50 is showing that it can be a joy to cook, together, to have that experience with food, that is a positive one.
Yeah, man. I completely agree. It definitely starts at a young age, and a lot of people don't realize that, because this actually inspired me to get into cooking. Is that when you give a child, the ability to do something simple in the kitchen, whether it's something as simple as holding a spatula, or giving them the chance to mix an ingredient, you give them a sense of empowerment. And when you give them that sense of empowerment, it kind of piques their curiosity. Like, take me for example. When I was a child, I would grow up watching my aunts and my grandmother and mom cook in the kitchen, and my grandmother would ask me to do something as simple as crack a couple of eggs. And while of course she added flour and baking soda and everything else to the mixture, it made me feel like I was part of the process. So as she started making more recipes, I asked, what else can I do? Can I knead something? Can I chop something up? Can I mix? And as you start to get that confidence, because you have people who are experts at it, giving that power to you, it builds your confidence up. And then you start to think, okay, well, this is something that I love doing. What else could I do? So, it's great that you got your kids started off young doing this, because I can almost assure you, just having that knowledge and expertise when they, become teenagers and when they get older, they're going to have a lot more knowledge than we have. And they'll be teaching us techniques that we didn't even think was possible. Like, I can't tell you how many times my grandmother, who was pretty much the inspiration for all of my cooking, she comes to me and asks me for techniques, and that means a lot to me because I grew up watching her cook in the kitchen, and everything that I learned came from her. So for her to come to me and ask me for techniques and tips, it kind of comes full circle in the sense that, you teach one, you move on to the next one, and then we just, kind of keep paying it forward like that.
Yeah, you're going to get to see that. Actually, I cook with both of my grandmothers on the 50 by 50 tour. One in Alabama. That'll be the first episode, and then one in Virginia, which is a few months away.
It's a beautiful thing, man. Um, just real quick, I wanted to ask because I think this is something that a lot of people have asked me on my page and just in general, and it's also a thought process that I had initially, but kind of steered away from. I think one of the problems that people have when it comes to healthy eating is the misconception that healthy eating is expensive. I do understand that fast food is convenient, and I feel like it's more convenient than it is costly. And what I mean by that is that people kind of think that, oh, fast food is cheap, fast food is affordable, so I can go out, buy myself a burger and fries, and that's it. But what people don't understand is that one, fast food isn't as cheap as it was back in the day. It's actually more
No.
expensive than ever. Two, I feel like people kind of confuse convenience with effort. And what I mean by that is, yeah, it's more convenient to, go to DoorDash and order McDonald's and there's your dinner. But there are a lot of places that give healthier alternatives to burgers. Even if you want to just get some ground beef, get, some rolls, get your toppings, all that you spend at the grocery store is a little bit more affordable if you do your research on what stores to go to. And just kind of giving an example, I spent a couple weeks ago, I wanted a fast food burger. I wasn't really into much the cooking, so I went to Five Guys to get a burger. And for a burger and fries with the toppings that I usually make at home, onions, cheese, pickles, that almost cost me $20. Went to the grocery store. I got a pack of ground beef. I got some hamburger buns. I went to the deli, got some cheese. I got some got the other ingredients from my local farmers market. I spent $15 on all those ingredients, and I was able to make burgers for my entire family and had meat and other ingredients left over. So, what would you say to people who kind of have that misconception that eating healthy is expensive? And what ways do you kind of, I guess, trying to think of the word I want to use. What ways do you go about, kind of combating that perception that eating healthy is expensive?
A lot of it has to do with the quality of the food that you eat. It makes you feel full and makes you feel fulfilled. So you can eat the fast food burger, but you're going to be hungry later,
Mhm.
or you're going to feel bloated, or that greasiness is going to set in, and you're just going to feel like not doing anything. Um, or you can make a burger at home, and you're going to get you're going to get a cleaner eat no matter what, because you see the first parts of it. Uh, burger is a kind of a strange example to make healthy, but um, you know, then you see what is it, the Netherlands? They have like the last McDonald's ever sold in the Netherlands, and it still exists in a plastic case. You can go look at it, and it
Mhm.
still looks like the day it was made. There's something wrong there, you
Yeah.
know. Uh, there's something wrong there. So for me, I shop with Misfits Market. That's how I save some money. It is delivered to my door, and I get organic produce. Um, and produce is the base of all of my cooking. It's not processed foods like even like bread. I make my own bread most of the time. I do buy bread at the store sometimes, but um, it's so inexpensive to make your own bread as compared to buying a loaf of bread that costs, I don't know, $6, $7 these days if you buy something decent. I mean, yeah, you can buy the $2 cheap white bread, but you're not going to get fulfilled by eating that. You're gonna fall short. And bigger, better, faster, cheaper does not work as far as being a healthy person. You you don't get as much out of it, and you're basically throwing your money away because you can buy a whole meal of meat and vegetables and cook it yourself for easily a third of the price of eating out. And you start getting into steak and stuff like that, it
Mhm.
gets it's even less, less costly. So um, my kids, we'll have steak every couple weeks or something, and people I know people are looking at me online going, "What the heck? This guy, he's spending all this money." Well, I'm really not. I calculated a meal. We had steak, asparagus, and something else, maybe corn. Um, and it was $8 a person. $8 a person. You're gonna get a steak anywhere for $8? You're not. I mean, you can't even get a Whopper at Burger King for $8.
Yeah.
Prices vary, I know, everywhere you're at. Down here, a Whopper value meal is like 12 or $13. I mean, I can eat steak and asparagus and corn, freshly prepared, and feel great about it, or I can have a Whopper. What? Why would I choose the Whopper? Really? Why would I choose the Whopper? And the amount of time that it takes me to drive to Burger King and back is more than it did to cook the whole meal.
Yeah.
So it is not more expensive to eat healthy. In fact, it's cheaper if you're eating at home, and that's that's one of those things that I sort of preach. I don't want to sound preachy, but cooking at home is economically the best way to live your life, as well as the healthiest way to live your life, in my opinion and in my experience. I've been doing this for a while. I started cooking just about everything that we eat 4 years ago, something like that, 4 or 5 years ago, and it's changed everything. And I feel better, and I save money.
Great advice, great tips. And like I said, I agree. I feel like people have this misconception that eating healthy is expensive. And don't get me wrong, I definitely do understand, some people who may only make a certain amount of money and they feel like they have to get, you definitely want to do what's affordable and what makes sense to your budget. But if you are trying to eat healthy, there are options out there for you for people who want to eat healthy. You don't necessarily have to, spend money on steak if you can't afford steak. I definitely do agree.
Right.
But, you know, good quality chicken breast, there's vegetables, there's recipes out there that we've created that we have no problem sharing with our audiences on that can be healthy, and you just make little tweaks to it. I've made plenty
Yeah.
of vegetable recipes that you know there are healthy alternatives to what I make, and there's the actual recipe itself. I've made beef and broccoli, for example, that is the traditional Chinese style, that may be a little bit salty or may have a lot of sugar, for example. And I've also shown the healthier way of making it too. It's just a matter of, just having that education and knowledge of where to shop at, of, what ingredients to buy. And I am glad that people are looking more into cooking at home now compared to, a few years back when, everything was, convenience and ordering out. But again, as influencers, as chefs, as professional cooks, it's up to us to kind of educate people and steer them in that direction. Because like you said, whether you're getting older like us, or whether you're in general just looking to make better eating choices and have healthier habits, we have a certain responsibility to teach people the right way of cooking. We have a responsibility to teach people you know healthier alternatives and options, and we also have a responsibility to tell people and just show people how to access that. It's easy to say, okay, eat healthy, but what if you're somebody who doesn't know what healthy options are out there? We'll be more than happy to share that with you. We just want to make sure that we're providing you that kind of value. um definitely want to thank you so much for being on this podcast. As the very first guest of the podcast, it does mean a lot. Certainly, this won't be the end of your time on Cast Iron Conversations because, as you always know, you're always welcome on the show. I love having conversations with you because I feel like we can talk about food and just life for hours on it. And to me,
Yeah, we could.
that's what this show is all about. It's not just about cooking. It's not about interviews. It's about just having a conversation about the business that we love being a part of. It's about what food does to people. It brings people together. It unifies cultures. Like there are so many recipes out there. Just to kind of go back to what I was discussing about making a pizza. I'm actually in the process of making a Detroit style pizza, which is a unique form of pizza, and we'll get into that in later parts of the podcast. But it just goes to show that no matter what you're making, what recipe that you have, in your kitchen or what you have in your arsenal, it's something that's unique to every culture, and we can all have a story and a conversation about it. But again, we'll definitely have more time to talk about the pizza. But just before we wrap up, Dave, I just want to ask you, just being an experienced restaurateur, an experienced chef, someone who's looking to take that next step in his journey with this 50 by 50 series, is there any advice that you have for anybody who's looking to get into the restaurant business? Anybody who's looking to start their own culinary journey? What tips and advice would you have for them?
Ooh, the restaurant industry is a tough one. Um, I'll be honest, I don't think I ever will return to the restaurant industry as a full time chef. It's just I've had that experience, and I've put in the 14-hour days, 7 days a week, and it can really wear on you. So what I would say is, if you want to get into the restaurant industry, take a small bite first. Make sure that it's for you. I was in there for 7 years. I loved it. I loved being around people. I loved, and that's why I tell my customers, they're like, "Oh, we miss you." I say, "I miss you too." It's not. It's not as much about missing working 14 hours a day, because I don't miss that at all. Um, but I miss the people. So if I were to do it over again, I would probably do a food truck or something smaller, lunch only, that kind of thing, because it can really take over your life. Um, I, I miss some things when my kids were young because I was at a restaurant instead of at their events or at school or whatever it was. So if you have a young family, restaurant industry is probably not the industry for you. Um, But if you want to do it, take a small bite first. Trust me, it's not worth going all in like I did and missing out on life. The restaurant industry can be really tough, and it's getting tougher with food costs being up, and we've seen inflation of food costs. You think your grocery bill is getting higher? Try looking at the bills of a restaurant. It's crazy, and you've got to pay for the overhead and the support staff, and everybody involved needs a piece of the pie, or you'll fail. And
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough. I personally um, would caution anybody about getting into the restaurant business uh, at this time, because it's really tough.
Yeah, I definitely do agree. And just to speak on that sentiment, when I first joined social media, that was actually one of my goals was to start my own restaurant.
Mhm.
But I heard so many horror stories from, professional chefs and restaurateurs about how dreadful it is to even start a restaurant. For one, a lot of them don't really make a profit for the first few years. And then, like you
I
said,
know.
you have to pay your staff, you have to pay for maintenance, you have to pay for rent, you have to pay for equipment, you have to, constantly pay for food. You have inspections constantly, which anybody should realistically get. You have licenses that you have to get. There's just so much overhead that goes behind a restaurant before you even start making money. And then you have to put the time and effort into being there. And people think, fortunately you were a restaurateur and a chef, but a lot of good restaurants don't really have the same person doing both. You usually have a person who's the restaurateur who focuses on the business and the financial aspect, and then you hire somebody to be your chef. So that way, you kind of have that balance. But it's a lot that goes into a business. And so I feel that's one of the things that I feel social media is doing great for us, because we can still do these things, but we have different avenues of doing it, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a food truck, whether it's simply cooking meals on social media, or, like yourself doing a YouTube channel where you get to travel. You don't have as much emphasis on, being behind a kitchen, being in a kitchen, or, spending 14 hours a day in a restaurant. You actually get to explore the world, and you get to see different things and try different foods. And it's a beautiful thing what we get to do now. And I'm just excited at what's in store for the future when it comes to food. Well, Dave, again, thank you so much for being the first guest of Cast Iron Conversations. As I said before, door is always open for you to come back. If you haven't done so by now, make sure you check Dave out on social media. I'll leave the floor open to you, just to make sure you promote your social media pages, promote your 50 by 50. So the floor is all yours. Tell people where they can find you at on social media. Tell people when 50 by 50 is going to debut. I look forward to personally being, a part of this, whether I'm actually, on the show. I'm definitely
Oh, you are.
subscribed.
You are. You'll be in the Wisconsin episode for sure, and then I plan to come visit you, of course. So
Yeah,
we don't live in the same state, so it's perfect.
I look forward to it, man.
Yeah. So the easiest way to find me and all of the socials is just go to chefdavepalmer.com. That makes it as simple as possible. You can click. There's a section for follow where you can follow all the channels. There is a special page just for 50 by 50 that explains a little bit more about 50 by 50 and what the concept is. There's also a map of all the states that I have locked up contacts and made sure I have a contact there. So if you're in a state that's on my map that has a yellow or gray color, and doesn't have green, let me know if you want me to come visit you, because I might. Um, I am visiting people that I don't know, which is kind of, I don't want to say it's scary. It's not really scary, because I try to get to know the people a little bit ahead of time
Mm.
by interacting with them online. But I mean, I literally am visiting people that I do not know sometimes in states where I don't have family or friends. Um, so that's a bit of an adventure, and I think those episodes are going to be probably a little bit different than the ones where I go visit like my grandma. Um, that is the first episode, by the way. That's Alabama. I was born in Alabama, so I thought I should start my journey in Alabama. Um, I just wrapped up filming the Alabama episode, and I was working on editing it last night, as a matter of fact. So that will launch sometime within this month, which is 50 months before my 50th birthday. This month, April, is 50 months before my 50th birthday. I'm trying to get it out before sometime next week. And my anniversary is coming up, and we reference that as well in the first episode. So trying to get it out by my anniversary, which is the day after tax day, uh, April 16th. Easy to remember for me, anyway. The day after tax day, and yeah, so just go ahead and head to chefdavepalmer.com. You can click around; you'll find all of the necessaries, links to the 50 by 50 playlist, which is on YouTube. You'll see my trailer, and I don't know. Do you think I went a little over the top with the trailer?
No, I
You
feel
saw
like,
it.
well, I think you did definitely go over the top, but I feel like it was one of those things that makes me go, wow, I have to tune in. Like, people don't seem to understand that we're not professional editors. We're not people who've had
Yeah.
training in like film. So a lot of this stuff we do on our own. And when I first saw the trailer and I heard the music, I was thinking, oh my God, like not only is this really happening, but like this is captivating. Like if I've known you for a while, so it's no surprise to me. But if I was somebody looking at that trailer for the very first time, instantly I'm thinking, click subscribe. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether I'm, sitting at home or whether I'm driving, looking at my phone, which you shouldn't do. I'm just kidding, by the way. But it just goes to show that's how captivating this trailer was. It just seemed like a groundbreaking movie trailer that just catches your attention, and instantly you're just like, when can I tune in? And that's the whole entire spirit of this show. And I'm just promoting it because I'm a big fan of his work, and I just love the idea of going to different states and trying out different recipes and just knowing what's unique to that particular state's food scene. So if you haven't tuned in, make sure you click on that subscribe button for Cast Iron Conversations. Make sure you go to chefdavepalmer.com, follow him on social media, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube page. I'll definitely make sure that the link to his page is in the description below once this podcast goes live. And again, I cannot wait for this. This is something that I feel is necessary in this food space. And I am praying and hoping that it gets to that level of Anthony Bourdain greatness and surpasses that. And I just look forward to seeing what's going to happen with you in the future in the food industry, Dave.
Well, thank you, Patrick. I appreciate you so much. You're an inspiration to me as well. As soon as the day we met, I was like, I gotta be buddies with this guy. He knows what's up, and we have such different styles, but at the same time, it's like I can see how your stuff is inspiring to other people too, and it inspires me. I've definitely got your ebook, and I've tried out a few of your recipes. I don't post them online because they don't look as good as yours. I'm gonna have to work on that part. You're like the fry king, you know how to fry things to perfection. So I'm gonna have to work on my frying game to catch up to you, buddy.
Listen, man, I appreciate that. And I can definitely say one thing that you've inspired me to do is to make sure that I cook healthy ingredients and make sure I'm using organically sustained ingredients for my family. And, it's just like I said before, that's what food is all about. It's about inspiring one another. It's about embracing that while we do have differences in our styles and our approaches, at the end of the day, food is food. Food is love. And food is taking us on remarkable journeys that we never would have thought would be possible. Uh,
Absolutely.
Dave, again, thank you for joining us on this podcast. Thank you all for listening to this interview. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.